Nowhere But Texas was supported in part by the Denton Appleton Baldwin Fund and by members like you. Thank you.
Here's a town that has become world famous because of its unusual occupation. The editor of the leading newspaper, A. Morton Smith, is phoning from his office, sending out dozens of calls. People from every walk of life leave their work in answer to his summons. J.B. Sailors and Leon Gilmore of the Power and Light Company are first to respond. Bill Ritchie, telephone lineman, is still at work, but when he sees the housewives ditch their aprons, he knows there's something doing. And there's Jerry Merle, the milliner. Where's everybody going, Jerry? Ah, so that's it.
Gainesville Community Circus, that was what this town was all about. There were doctors and lawyers and housewives and merchants that were all part of the show. It was really a big family. The whole town was just one big family. Morton Smith was the editor of the paper. He's the one that, it was his idea of getting this little circus started.
And they needed a money maker. And A. Morton Smith came up with the idea of, let's put on some circus acts.
And more people wanted to become part of the show, so they all started joining in, and it was amazing to see the people that were interested in, and no one got paid.
We had over 100 performers at one time in the circus. I mean, we're counting clowns, aerialists, trapeze, horseback riders.
That was the first all-amateur, community-type circus. It actually was a circus. It wasn't just a little one ring. It wasn't just people, you know, going around acting like clowns and stuff. It was a real circus.
The circus also traveled, you know. They were not only just here in Gainesville.
Actually, it was shown at the Will Rogers Coliseum, and it was packed. That Coliseum was packed with people.
In April, when we had our opening big top performance, everything closed. The business is closed for the day. Everyone that wanted to participate in the circus in the city of Gainesville, they were never turned away. If you couldn't do anything in the circus, they would put you in a clown suit and a pair of shoes.
Hello, my name is Billy Woods. I started with the Gainesville Community Circus as a flying trapeze artist.
Hi, my name is Pat Reagan Helm, and I was in the Gainesville Community Circus when I was about 14 years old, and I was known as the Human Fly.
Hi there, my name is Fane Butts. I walk the high wire.
My name is really Mary Louise, but when I was in the circus, I was so thin and little, the clowns nicknamed me Bitsy.
My name is Evelyn Walker. I was an aerialist, and I was in the circus almost 25 years.
There's a circus today in Gainesville that started 25 years ago, and our live cameras are there at this moment. They do what they want in Texas, you know. In Gainesville, they wanted a circus composed of its citizens. It's a homemade three-ring town. There's a circus family, Mr. and Mrs. Dalton Walker of Gainesville, Texas, and their daughter, Susan. Dalton, is the whole family in on the act?
Almost, but I'm sorry I don't have time to talk to you right now, Dave. I'm on in a minute.
Oh.
got to go too, Dave. Evelyn and I do a trapeze act where she flies through the air, and I should be there to catch her.
He was stationed in the service, and that's how we met. And then after he was discharged from the Air Force, we married. He became an active member of the circus. He loved it so well, I didn't have to give it up.
The Daring Flying Walkers.
We had a husband and wife act together.
Your husband's real great, too. You seem pretty secure with him. I mean, he'll catch you every time.
Oh, yes, but I don't dare go up on those days when he's mad at me.
A lot of our practice sessions were done in our backyard. All in all, it was a very exciting, wonderful time of my life.
Professional performers, they had no place to park during the winter. They didn't have any land or any place to go. So Gainesville, they invited them in to stay at the barn that Gainesville Community Circus had. And they would park, you know, they have lights and water for the trailers and for the winter, and a barn to practice in their particular act.
A. Martin had a way of getting in contact with these people to come into Gainesville to make their winter quarters here and train the people.
I worked back east for several years with the Six Girl Act, and we worked parks and fairs in the summertime, springtime. In the wintertime, we worked nightclubs and theaters. I came here in 1947 to help the Gainesville Community Circus have a flying act and to train them. I thought, this is not going to be much of a circus here. They were just precious. They just did their tight wire and their clowning. And I mean, they put on a professional looking show. And I had seen plenty of shows too, so I loved it so much. I thought these people were so wonderful that I ended up staying here in Gainesville and let the other group go on to show business wherever they went. It fascinated me because I had been a professional and became an amateur here in Gainesville. Well, I met my husband, Vern Brewer, here in Gainesville, and he had a pony and dog and monkey act. Then he had some friends that were professional people that would stay here. They taught him how to walk the wire. But he was a plain old farmer, boy. You don't find too many farmers walking wires. I got to work and help him with a little baby elephant that was sheer precious. I tried to dance, do the dancing that the elephant was doing. She'd do her kicks, and I'd do a kick, and then she'd do some spins, and I'd do some spins, and she'd climb the steps, and I pretended I was going up too, but she was small, and she was just adorable. I mean, the whole family would be part of it. My husband and myself and my little girl that rode on the elephant's head.
Betty Brewer is the one that trained us when she was here in her off-season and taught us to do the ladder. But I did a twin ladder. There were two of us on a ladder, so we had to be synchronized. And then the ladder girls were all the way around the entire circus. And that was very colorful, very showy, and probably one of the easiest jobs in the world to do, but it was scary when you were learning it.
One time in Sherman, I went flying off this ladder and hit the ring curb on my back. And they took me out into the dressing room and laid me down. I thought my back was broken. They had a guard standing at the doorway. Here comes this fellow that came into the tent there and said, Betty, he said, let's wiggle your toes, you know. And the guard told him, he said, Buddy, he says, let's get out of here. He says, yeah, she's been hurt and you have no business touching her. He says, yes, I have. He says, I'm a doctor. But he was dressed as a clown, so no one knew that. I mean, this guard didn't know that it was Dr. Yarber. But he was trying to see if my back was broken, which it wasn't.
The thrilling part was being able to get out in front of the people.
You work for that thunderous applause that you get sometimes. You know, when everything goes right, the crowd is congenial, they like you. and you do something good and they just go crazy, and I thought, it makes you feel like a rock star, you know?
Oh, that was the best part of it.
We were doing a big show down in Dallas, and I'm up there and I'm doing my acts, you know, and you was getting this very light applause, you know, kind of polite. And I got upset about it, and I got about 3/4 way across on it, just walking back, you know. And I heaved that pole because we always used a balance pole. So I started giving it, you know, arm wavings and keeping my balance with my arms. And I did. I walked the rest of the way over there. But when I got over there, everybody started just applauding like crazy. And it just thrilled me to death because I felt 10 feet tall and bigger than a house because I'd done it. And that's one of the rewards you get for doing a show like we did. We didn't get paid for anything.
The State Fair was going, and we had a picture made for the State Fair of Texas in this specific wagon that you see behind us. I was 15.
I was one of the older ones. I was 17.
I was 14, but there were younger and quite a few older ones.
You don't get in trouble?
No, of course not.
Winter of 1954, they had a fire, and they lost all their equipment and the practice barn.
A lady who was a professional was wintering here, Dolly Jacob, but she was well known in show business. She had an elephant act, and she had them in the barn. And well, they, you know, elephants go to swing, and evidently one of them knocked over the wood stove, and that's what started the fire. They got the elephants out all right, but it burned up all our equipment.
At that time and point, they thought, well, you know, the circus was going to fold, and no one wanted to fold. So then we struggled to reestablish ourselves the following year.
Well, we never got a tent again. So we just repaired all the rigging we could.
Some of the people tried to keep the circus going for a couple more years, and which they did. They did a pretty good job, too. But they didn't have all the equipment that we had had before, so it just kind of faded away.
It was just not the same anymore after the fire.
It's like losing a family member or something. You know, after a while it gets easier, but you never get to where you actually don't miss it.
It was certainly a unique, unusual thing for a town. And for a town this size to have accomplished that was really miraculous.
It was a community affair, and that's what was really special, to see how everyone worked together. It was just something that they were having fun doing, and that was really the best part of my life.
And if you love it, they call it sawdust in your blood. And no matter how hard you try to get away from it, there is just something that always draws you back to it. It was a grand time.
Texas has always welcomed people who have bright ideas and are willing to work hard.
She took something that she knew how to do and made it into something that she could earn money with.
She was so proud of being here in the United States, very proud.
El Chico created over 4,000 jobs and annually served over 16 million customers.
She was definitely a pioneer. She started the whole thing.
Macario and Adelita grew up in the same village in Mier, in Mexico. Adelita was actually betrothed to one of Macario's brothers, but Macario's brother did not want to marry Adelita, so in breaking up with her, he sent Macario to deliver the message to her. And in the process, Macario and Adelita decided that they wanted to become engaged to be married, but they didn't want to have a family feud.
They had planned to elope, and they come to the United States. He said, no, I'm not going. And she said, you're not going? Well, I'm going. And I don't know how, but I'm going to live in the United States. And he had to come with her. That was her dream, to come in, and she was just a girl. But she was so determined.
When Macario and Adelita settled in Kaufman in 1913, they were sharecroppers, and Macario was a ranch foreman. They wanted their children to be born in Texas, and that was apparently became a great source of pride to them. But all 12 of Macario and Adelita's children were born and bred in Texas.
She did know the value of never accepting what you have as being all that there will ever be. She always pushed, we can do better, we can do more.
There was a music professor traveling through Kaufman, and Adelita met him and struck a deal with him where she would provide him room and board if he would teach her children how to play musical instruments. And they would perform in an orchestra at weddings or dances or parties and be paid income for that. But it wasn't really mariachi music. It was more like Scott Joplin kind of music.
And people in Kaufman today can remember attending parties where the Cuellar brothers were playing.
At the time that the boys were playing in the band, they needed to make more money.
In 1926, she actually set up a concession. She had a tamale stand at the Kaufman County Fair.
She won first, second, and third place with her food. And so it was her tamales, her enchiladas that were so good.
They used what was here. You could get pinto beans, you could get, could make chili con carne. Hot sauce was just tomatoes. I think it was a variation of Mexican food for the Texas American palate.
The Tex-Mex is original from here, you know. And people
no,
loved it.
There was no chili con carne in Mexico.
No.
But Texas are beef eaters. And so in order to appeal to the Texas people, then you put the meat in the chili, and you have chili con carne.
The amount of income that she raised in that one weekend was more than her husband made as a ranch foreman in an entire year. So she started doing it every year, and even to the point that I believe in about 1927 or 28, they opened a small cafe in Kaufman.
And it was called Cuellar's Cafe.
Should boys follow in their mama's footsteps? Absolutely, if she's Mama Adelita Cuellar of El Chico.
They were known as the Mama's Boys. And, you know, being a mama's boy, it can have negative connotation, but they wore that title very proudly.
And it sounded so hokey, and yet, when you saw the commercials and the expressions on their faces and how it really did capture their respect for their mother and how they translated that into their business, it worked.
Their mom was such a strong influence in their lives, and I think they all felt like she was the key to their success, and she was. She got them away from the farming business into the food business. Adelaida was the ultimate taste tester for the restaurants as the brothers started El Chico and they started opening more restaurants because ultimately they were her recipes, and she would let them know, oh, the rice is perfect, or the beans need salt, or the chili con carne needs a little more cumin.
There were disagreements from time to time about the menu. And I can remember as a child when we would have lunch, there was discussion about turkey mole on the menu, but the children at the table didn't care for it. It never made it to the menu. The children were never asked, but the decision was made by what food was left on the plate at the end of the meal.
Adelaida was a very small woman. It was just like a doll. I feel like picking her up. I'm not very big, but anyway, she was so tiny, and her personality was very sweet.
She got her way all the time, but she got her way in a very gentle manner.
My granddaddy, Macario, would not allow anybody to smoke around him or in the restaurant or at home, but grandmother smoked. And he always would allow her to smoke at the house. And she smoked till she was 97 years old. And she would not just smoke a cigarette. She had a hairpin, and she would put the hairpin on the cigarette so she could smoke it all the way down. And that was just fascinating to watch.
Adelaida grew and nurtured and fostered and promoted Tex-Mex cuisine far beyond her wildest imagination.
She didn't single-handedly bring Tex-Mex to Texas, but because there were predecessors of hers. But Adelaida was definitely on the ground floor of introducing Tex-Mex food to the United States and to Texas in particular.
El Chico was the largest Hispanic-founded business in Dallas in the 20th century, which is an incredible accomplishment, especially when you realize that it all started with a small 5'3" Hispanic woman who served tamales at a county fair in Kaufman.
There were people that came from all over the United States. Howard Hughes, Lana Turner.
It was on the circuit of places for celebrities to visit and see who's here and be seen.
And you had to be an invited guest. This was the place to gamble. 50 to 100 people would be here.
You had to have $500 come through that front gate.
You got the 1930s. Pressure is brought to bear in Austin to approve pari-mutuel betting. Arlington Downs, which is a racetrack, was already here in Arlington, been here since 1929. But since you couldn't bet at the racetrack, you didn't really get the high rollers and the excitement and the money moving that you would get with pari-mutuel betting.
Arlington Downs was one of the best tracks in the United States at that time. The grandstand was palatial. It would seat thousands and thousands of people. The parking area was large enough that thousands of cars could be parked there. There were people that came from all over the United States. They flew in, they came by car.
The focus is put here because it's the only legitimate racetrack gambling in, if not in Texas, certainly in North Texas, which means high rollers, which means big bucks. Coinciding with this, as wide open gambling disappears, the new kind of gambling is casino gambling. Casino is a nice way of saying behind closed doors. You got somebody on the watch at the door, you know, the old knock on the door, certain knocks, Charlie sent me, that kind of stuff. So gambling still goes on, but it's back rooms, it's upstairs rooms, and casino sounds nicer.
The people that came to Top of the Hill Terrace were among the same people that visited Arlington Downs. They would go to Arlington Downs during the day, and then they would travel down the Bankhead Highway to Top of the Hill Terrace and visit it in the evening.
The main room was for card players, bridge players, and then roulette and dice and blackjack.
On the weekends, there were no hours. It was open around the clock. They just rotated the dealers and kept everybody working.
No, you could come through there any time of the day you want them. Plenty of people know where it was, but you'd have to have so much money to get in there. You couldn't get in there with $20. You had to have $500 to come through that front gate. Yeah, them people had money.
Celebrities, the big ones, are always looking for the new place, the in place. And if they hear that there's now big-time horse racing in Fort Worth, and oh, there's this little place a couple of miles away, Top of the Hill Terrace, they're going to come see it. It's where the beautiful people are going.
The casino took in about $200,000 on a weekend easily. Then I later heard on it would go up to $250,000 to $500,000.
Down under there where they gamble at, they had a tub down there, you know, where they throwed all the change. I'd go by and say, man, I need some money. Go down there and get your 2 handfuls of change. That's all you get, come on out with it. They partied, the people that had money, they partied all the time.
Warrant is now being written for you to raid the Top of the Hill Terrace. I said, the Top of the Hill Terrace, that's on this side of Arlington. It is a high society gambling place. That's the crowd you need to get after.
J. Frank Norris was the cutting edge of the fundamentalist Protestant movement in the United States, 1920s and 30s. He brought a great deal of attention to Fort Worth, some good, some bad. Everything he said, everything he did was attention-grabbing. J. Frank Norris never met a headline he didn't like. He was a master of the soundbite, and he was always in the news. So he used the bully pulpit of First Baptist Church to, you pick which one's a priority, make a name for himself, and to fight the good cause.
We are sending a man out with a special warrant. The grand jury has asked you to raid the Top of the Hill Terrace.
Dr. Norris got some constable, and they came out here in 1933, and he conducted his own raid here. And he had his son bust through the front gates with his car to gain entrance here.
that particular night, I went to bed and I slept until about 9 o'clock that next morning, and I couldn't hear anybody in the dining area or kitchen, which was unusual. And I went out and looked around, and I started down the stairs into the basement where the gambling was, and a sheriff or deputy met me. He was coming up the stairs, and he said, "Who are you?" And I answered, and he says, "I think you better go back to bed." So I went back to the bedroom, and that was the end of it. But later I found out that it had been a raid.
Went in there and took all the tables, all the gambling paraphernalia, and loaded on those 2 trucks, and brought it in to the grand jury, and brought in the carloads of the men and women who were out there gambling.
This tunnel here was an escape tunnel from the casino, and this casino was very high-tech for back then. He had it fixed so if a raid was taking place within minutes, Fred Browning could convert it over to look like a dining room. He had a roulette wheel on the wall, and the wall would turn where they could hide the roulette wheel. They had gaming tables that fold up into the wall, and there was a cue stick rack that was fake, and you'd bend over, stick a key in the electrical socket and turn it, and it would release this rack to reveal a secret room where they could push the gambling equipment.
They closed up several times from pressure, you know, here and there. Like they hauled all their material off one time, all his merchandise or his paraphernalia, whatever you would call it. But they didn't stay closed long. He'd open up again. But in '47, they shut him down for good.
Lone Wolf Gonzalez of the Texas Rangers hid behind one of the cars trying to get in the front gate, and they opened the gate to let the car in, and so Lone Wolf Gonzalez got on the property.
Said, "The Rangers are here." Well, what can you do? Send them up. But they already had somebody up there that got over the fence, and the rest of them won't come through the gate, so send them up.
The gamblers would run out this tunnel and run along the land here up into the tea garden where they had food and drinks planted. Fred Browning was up and running again, but people just didn't come back. They were afraid to.
The top of the hill terrace. Went in there and took all the tables, all the gambling paraphernalia, and loaded on those 2 trucks, and brought it in to the grand jury. It broke up that place.
How long have you been riding horses?
I've been riding horses for, shoot, probably all my life.
A lot of people don't ever see a black cowboy or a cowboy color.
The thing that surprises people more than anything is they didn't know that there was that many of us. Where in the world did you all come from?
So most of my friends that's not cowboys can't believe that I'm a cowboy. But to the ones that I already know, it's already understood. I got my first horse when I was 7 years old. a little coat named Rabbit. It was gray and black. My grandfather, he decided for me to go ahead and see if I can become, work the horses and decide riding them and training them. That's how he influenced me a lot to do it. He was a cowboy back in the day.
The stereotypic myth of the cowboy with regard to race was that this individual was white. And if you look back historically, many cowboys were black. Many of the cowboys on the major cattle drives were people of color.
Black cowboys, today, we come from the metropolitan area as being athletes who loved horses. Years ago, we came from the ranch, from the working part of the ranch. Over 1/3 of the cowboys that rode the ranch in the early days were people of color, blacks, Hispanics, and Indians. And it was just a bunch of cowboys who worked on the ranch every day that needed something to do on the weekend, and they wanted to display their skills. Cowboys who said, you know, I got a guy that works on my ranch that can out-rope anybody. Guy said, hold it, wait a minute. I've got a guy on my ranch that I think can out-rope anybody. So they came together on the weekend or in town or wherever and started having a rodeo. Black rodeo started because, number one, they could not participate in the mainstream rodeos. That is one of the things that happened.
They were discriminated against. They were much like the Negro Leagues because the athletes who participated in each of those sports were denied access to mainstream rodeo and mainstream baseball. So back in the 40s and maybe even prior to the 40s, African Americans started to form their own rodeos that we call the soul circuit, which is a black rodeo circuit. I've referred to the African Americans who've competed in the soul circuit as shadow riders. Shadow riders in that for many years, they rode in the shadows of their white counterparts. When we talk about black cowboys or cowboys of color, everyone initially goes to Bill Pickett. Bill Pickett was the individual who basically invented what we call bulldogging or steer wrestling. Bill Pickett participated in the early rodeos and was a rodeo star. He's the first African American to have been inducted in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. Yeah, another cowboy of color that's oftentimes mentioned was a guy by the name of Jesse Stahl. As the story goes, Jesse Stahl once became so disenchanted with a score that he got in which he knew he had outperformed some of his counterparts, decided to ride the next bronc backwards with a cigar in his mouth. So he was kind of a colorful fella. When sport forms desegregated, it was a very intimidating situation for early African-American rodeo cowboys because they were coming into town oftentimes by themselves, so they did not have the benefit of a team. They may very well have been threatened and run out of town.
I've never woke up a day that I can remember when I didn't want to be a cowboy. It's my uncle. He wanted me to be a baseball player. He says, why would you want to be a cowboy when you got two strikes against you? Number one, you're African American. Number two, there's just not any black cowboys out there. And you know, to some people, that would have set them back, but to me, that was a driving force.
My father, he started, when he was about 19 years old, and it's something that he just passed on to us. And I've probably been roping calves competitively probably since maybe 13 years old.
It's like football in our house. Everybody ropes, so we grew up doing it.
If my grandpa wasn't doing this stuff, I would just be sitting up in the stands saying to myself that I wish I was them.
The soul circuit is still in existence today. The athletes that participate are not the high-profile rodeo cowboys, but this is a viable rodeo circuit.
This is a farm system for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans to hone their skills to go to the next level. That's what Cowboys of Color is.
What this circuit brings to mind is the legacy of the African American rodeo cowboy. There is no Negro League in baseball anymore, but we would be losing part of our past if we omitted the fact that there was a Negro League. These are individuals who paved the way for some of the up-and-coming African-American athletes. Where you had a Willie Thomas or a Bill Pickett, you now have Fred Whitfield, who's a celebrated African-American calf roper.
It's a lot of people going to be here tonight didn't even know there was a black cowboy, didn't know that we were as good as we are. And these are the kind of guys that the kids need to see, because they can sit there and look at these guys and say, look, they're the same color as I am, so there's a possibility if I work hard enough and I have the talent, I can be as good or better than they can. And for African-American cowboys, it's a dream.
Another day at the office, that's it.
The British government many years ago made a decision that they would bury their dead, war dead, where they fall. We have 20 boys buried here. Some I knew, some I did not know, and it's just a part of Terrell history, and they are a part of it. The future generations need to know what the American and British cooperation means to freedom of the world.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost. We shall never surrender. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt's staff came up with the scheme to take pilots from the RAF training program and train them in the British flying training schools in America. They all had to come to Canada, discharged from the Royal Air Force to civilian status, and then the United States government issued them a 6 months visitor's visa, and they came down here in civilian clothes to protect America's neutrality. After all, they were just civilians going through school down here.
where they said in the paper that foreigners were coming to Terrell. I said, maybe Dallas or Fort Worth or some other place, but not Terrell, not little Terrell. Foreigners coming?
They didn't have uniforms on when they started. They had just had on their tweed jackets and their heavy wool pants and were coming into Terrell in the heat, walking up. They were different. They were very different.
I fully expected to see cowboys and Indians.
But it wasn't any time until they were home folks. They were just, they just became a part of our family.
We had no concept that they would be ordinary folks just like us. And they had no idea that we were ordinary folks either. And I think that was the big surprise for both that kind of gelled into a wonderful understanding and relationship.
The residents of Terrell thought they were doing something for the war effort by entertaining these British youths who had come over here. But then they got so they enjoyed them. They were good friends. And there wasn't a house on the street, probably, that didn't have some of the young people in.
After Pearl Harbor, America was at war on our side. Therefore, uniforms were put back on, uniforms were allowed to be worn, military application was allowed, although we still didn't do air-to-air gunnery or air-to-ground bombing or anything like that. It was all assimilated. But our blue uniforms began to be known, and people, if we were hitchhiking to Dallas, they'd pick us up and carry us wherever we wanted to go. Of course, it was hard work, 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night. The people really gave us a wonderful time that we were here.
They periodically would call and say, would it be convenient to come up to your house, Mrs. Bass? And Mother said, well, I guess so, come on. And they'd walk all the way from the airport all the way up here. This is the house that the Englishmen that I knew would come and visit. And they would come on the weekends, have supper, and sit on the porch in the summertime, and there were no fans then. Come out here and see, let me show you the porch. This is really sort of interesting because all sorts of things happened on the porch in those days with girls and young gentlemen. But it was sort of upsetting to be out here with your gentleman caller and your grandmother and your grandfather were listening to the ball games in the bedroom right there. So it was an interesting thing. And the Englishmen were very pleased to have, they didn't know much about porches, but they learned a lot.
Bass Drugstore was the downtown headquarters for RAF. Everybody went there for something, you know.
The boys just thought Miss Bass was really something because she greeted them when they came in the drugstore. When some of the boys come for the first time and they didn't realize our remark of y'all come back, they would turn around and come back to see what you wanted when you'd say that.
And Mother said, oh no, that's just a colloquialism that we have, and that means come back to the drugstore, or come back to our house, not now, but in the future.
The boys married people from Dallas, Fort Worth, Sherman, Tyler, just wherever they met them, you know. When people say, well, how did you come to America? What made you come? And I tell them the story about the school. And I said, in fact, I'm a GI bride in reverse. Yeah, I married an American girl and came back to America, just like the girls married the Americans and then they came back to America. So I expressed that we are GI brides in reverse. One fellow told me, he said, no, you should say your GI husbands, it would sound better.
Colin was well educated, very well educated, and very sophisticated for Terrell, Texas. I liked him that he was sincere. He was a very he was more serious than most people that I had been around. And he was beautifully educated, and I was sort of snooty in those days. I really enjoyed him a lot for that reason. We would sit out here and listen to classical music being played in my Victrola in the music room. He could play the piano real well, which was a very, very romantic thing. Most of the time, we would just be around here. Like I told you, it was hard to get to Dallas. Maybe we'd save up our gasoline and I'd go over to Major's Field and bring him back. And I think possibly in one of those drives back from Major's Field, he sort of suggested that I might like to move to England sometime. He was back in England, see, and they were getting ready for the Normandy invasion. And he was, I think he was out of Oxford at a camp out there. And he was flying Havilands. Haviland is a big, big, big bomber type. And he was flying that, and the plane just exploded. And he was right at Oxford. There was no reason for it. They thought it was sabotage. And he was killed. Daddy came and told me that they had just gotten a telegram. We didn't have telephone calls, we got telegrams. This was a very sad situation. And I was really torn up about it. The hardest time that I can remember is going to the train station and having to tell them goodbye, not knowing if you'd ever see them again. That was really hard.
When the senior squadron, senior class were leaving, and they had all these friends, and they would come down to the railroad station. It was not unusual for there to be 200 or 300 people waving goodbye. And Terrell going east, you go up a grade to the next town, and actually Old Lang Syne was sung as they left. That became a tradition and gradually faded out as they went up the grade. It was very emotional. It was like leaving home again. We've got a wonderful memorial. It seems to help the families know that they are being well looked after and that they will continue to be looked after by local people and also by the War Graves Commission. The main persons or people looking after this cemetery were Bertha and Virginia Brewer. They've passed on now, but we've been eternally grateful to them.
The graves will always be there, and so that is something that a person can visit and realize that the school was in Terrell.
The local people understood the boys. I think they knew. They felt for them.
This was unique, completely different. Kindness and generosity that we poured on all these young guys.
The people in Terrell adopted us as their sons. They made us feel at home. And it was a time in our lives that we had something special.
Nowhere But Texas was supported in part by the Denton Appleton Baldwin Fund and by members like you. Thank you.